You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions. This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/intotheportal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And we are back with Film Friday?
Question mark?
I have a new segment for this. The Cinema Sunday.
Cinema Sunday.
Or Sunday at the cinemas. I don't know.
You just sprung that on me. I had no idea. That actually doesn't sound half bad.
No.
Maybe we need to change it to that, although we normally do regular episode releases on Sundays.
Yeah.
But
nice to switch it up.
Yeah, it's all good. And you know what? We're going to be coming at you guys next week, just to let you know. We don't have a regular feed release this week. It was just a little bit too hectic, although we are working on something really cool. It dabbles in the realm of kind of like everyday creatures, if you will. But at the same time, it's kind of monsters and myths that sort of get left behind at the same time. Like stuff that we haven't covered yet in the 120-ish episodes or however many episodes we've done, which is kind of insane. So we're heading to the Nordic myths and legends and Norse mythology and trolls and monsters and awesome stuff like that. But yeah, we did want to apologize to you guys because it has been insane and we haven't been on our regular schedule per se.
Yeah.
We do want to get back to that, but until then, here we are. It's still the weekend. At least we still kind of hit that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
It's not Monday yet.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I am really excited for that episode next week. It's going to be with Zeng This, with our friend Justin from the Zeng This podcast. If you're not familiar with his show, go check it out. It's available everywhere you find us. And it's going to be really cool. He's really into this stuff. So he's got a lot to talk about and a lot to say. And he is a character and I can't wait. It's going to be super fun.
It's going to be great.
Okay. So let's jump right into this. Oh no, I have one more thing. Sorry. Rewind. We have a new release of Be Strange of the Clothing Co.
Yes.
So you guys gotta check it out. It's at straightupstrange.com. We're on Etsy as well. You can search for it on there. But the Necropolis series release, so inspired by the underworld of Giza and the lost mysteries of the ancients left beneath the sands of the complex.
Perhaps, indeed.
Well, I believe.
Well, yeah, and just to clarify, this is a release from the Straight Up Strange network that we are a part of. It's we'll have the link on our website. We're going to update our website just so we have a direct link over there, but it's not on our TeePublic or anything like that. It's actually on our new platform at straightupstrange.com.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much easier, right? Central Hub, you can find the shows, you can find all the... I don't even want to call it merch because it's so much more than that. It's a project we've been working on even before we even started doing the show, believe it or not, really, in terms of designing stuff and like wanting to kind of put this into reality. And so we're finally doing it. It's really exciting. So yeah, we hope you guys check it out.
And obviously with every purchase, you're supporting indie creators like us. So it definitely is a good cause in our opinion.
Yeah. High quality stuff. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm rocking it all the time and it's been sweet.
It is really neat. Yeah, I've been really enjoying it too.
You ready to jump into this?
Let's do it.
Okay. So today we're talking about a film called The Horror Express. And I actually have the Spanish language title is Pánico en el Trans-Siberiano.
Nice.
Okay, so Panic on the Trans-Siberian Express. Because this was a Spanish film. It was, like a European production. It was filmed in Madrid, so between 1971 and 1972. And it was relatively, I wouldn't say, I guess a low budget for the time, around $300K. So
that actually is seems quite reasonable.
It's a reasonable budget. I was reading blogs and they were like, oh, like just a pathetically low budget. And it's like, no, not really. I mean, $300,000, you can do a lot with that in the 70s.
Exactly. And it's already like stuff that's existing. Like they didn't build a train or anything like that. I would imagine they were just using what's already around them.
No. And it had enough clout to attract relatively well-known actors to the roles, right? Like the leads that they ended up getting. So they started filming in 1971 and it stars Christopher Lee, who is in a lot of sci-fi horror stuff.
Yes.
He's one of those guys that you kind of like, you know, but you don't know, right? Like you see the name, you're like, I know that guy.
I know. I'm like, I'm just having that thought right now. I'm like, well, what the heck is he on? Like his face is so familiar. Like what else do you know him from?
Oh man, but that's just it. Like off the top of my head, I can't even remember. But we were looking at stuff, and there was a whole bunch of. It was like, The Curse of the Mummy or something, 1962, like another horror sci-fi.
He played Dracula at one point as well.
Is that right? Okay, that makes sense. Maybe that's where I recognize him from.
Dracula. He's in Lord of the Rings as well. He's in Star Wars. He's also in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Just this guy.
He's everywhere.
He's all over the place.
He's in your house.
Oh,
he's
Lord
watching you.
of the Rings. That makes sense. Yeah, okay. There we go.
The Wicker Man. He's in The Hobbit. He's in Sleepy Hollow. I could just go on. The Mummy, 1959, not the Mummy that we're thinking of with Brendan Fraser.
Right.
Yep, a little bit more antiquated in that sense. A lot, though.
I did enjoy those movies, though, actually, going back. We should cover The
Alice
Mummy.
in Wonderland?
I like those Brendan Fraser ones. They're fun.
They're so cheesy, but they're like
fun.
They're in that class of like 90s action movies. That's just like
90s, early 2000s.
Anyways, we're getting off topic.
We are slightly off topic. Okay, so Christopher Lee, the lead, also starring Peter Cushing, Alberto de Mendoza, Silvia Tortosa, and Julio Pena. And basically, like, there's a myriad of characters. It's kind of hard to follow. We watched it twice. We recommend you guys do as well. And as always, if it's your first time joining us, spoilers abound.
Yep.
Watch it before you listen.
Exactly.
But let's just dive right into it. Let's get into how it all starts, because this is the bread and butter of Into the Portal in terms of just weird shit.
It is, and it had almost like an Orwellian vibe to it or something, in the sense, because it is like, a period piece. It's from like the turn of the 1900s, essentially 1906 or something like that.
Yeah.
For me, I love the beginning of this because it reminds me of a lot of those Victorian type novels that you'll read, like the mystery, like like Island of Dr. Moreau, things like that, where it starts off with this narration.
Yeah.
And that's very foreboding. It's talking about events that have befallen them and all this kind of thing. In this case, it's the expedition leader who is basically going off about how this is the true event that befell the expedition in Manchuria.
Yeah.
Boom. There you go.
Just shortened it there. Make it quicker. Let's speed it up here. Quicken it.
Speed it up there. Let's be efficient.
What would that podcast sound like? Just cut it. Just mash up every other word. Next word.
That would be very strange.
Well,
that'd be hard to edit. Like, what is this?
All right,
anyways,
we'll put that in the back burner.
But it's very interesting in the sense that you're looking at imagery from Manchuria at the time and the mountains and all that kind of thing, and then leading into Siberia, which is like they're on the Trans-Siberian Express in this case. But he kind of leads off saying that the blame is yet to be decided, and kind of like there's this whole like doo-doo-doo kind of situation.
You don't really know what for. It's like blame for what, right?
Blame for what? All we see is like, we do see images of a frozen monster, something that they have like unearthed from the ice. And we're not sure what this is. It looks humanoid to a certain degree. Neanderthal, like who knows? Like a very primitive human.
Yeah, you don't know. It's like is this just like the Minnesota Iceman that you're chiseling out of the ice, or is it a completely different species of same else? Humanoid shape?
Or perhaps is it both, right? What if it's something infected by a parasite?
Right.
Which is essentially what happens in this entire plot of the movie. Well, not a parasite per se, but in a metaphorical sense.
They hold off on it for a while, though.
They do.
And I like that a lot. But they also kind of slip up in some places, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah. So the real plot takes off when they depart. And it was so funny. It was like this classic like Hogwarts Express scene where it's like this very grand train.
It literally reminded me
Trans-Siberian
exactly
Express?
of the Hogwarts Express.
Exactly.
Like the angle that they showed
the colors,
the train.
Everything. Actually, no. Did we have colors in this movie? I'm picturing colors in my head.
Yeah, no, it totally did. But it was really faded.
It's hilarious. I'm like, wait a second. What's that black and white?
It's funny you say that.
I don't even notice though half the time when I'm watching a movie. I like make it up if it's not there.
Just you fill it in?
Yeah. Well, obviously you can tell if someone's like a brunette or something or whatever, if they're wearing red or, those are obvious. But
man, see, that's
a whole nother level.
That's impressive.
Whole nother level.
Anyway, that's funny you mentioned that though, because right off the top of the film, obviously it's a restored film. So wherever you find this, we watched it on Amazon Prime, so hopefully you guys can find it there wherever you can find it. I'm sure it's on YouTube as well. It's pretty available.
Yeah.
And it's not really quite to the status of a cult film per se. It's almost there. It's not quite there. But it has been restored, and it was like that was the disclaimer right before we watched it. It's like this has been the sound in the picture might not be great, which is funny, right? Because it was like a full production scale film with professional actors.
You could hear everything.
And in the 70s, I mean, our parents were having a good time in the 70s. It's not that long ago, really, right? I mean, anyway,
no, it's not that new. But
so
anyways, yeah.
that was kind of surprising, but
yeah.
So that's funny you mentioned the color, because it was extremely faded. Like it almost might as well have been black and white.
Might as well. But
anyway, continue.
We're continuing. So Hogwarts Express launches into the frigid terrain of the Siberian
Ron
tundra.
Devoured by a monstrous thing.
Exactly, with this thing aboard. It's in a crate. It looks like it's been defrosted to a certain degree when you have that little like peephole type thing and you can kind of see it. However, the main idea behind this is the fact that this professor, who's one of the main characters here, played by none other than Christopher Lee.
Indeed.
So he's not the villain in this case. He plays the villain a lot, but anyways, he's the main protagonist / antagonist to a certain degree, because he did a lot of things in this movie that kind of weren't the best for everyone.
He's in denial the entire film.
That's the main film, thing, yeah.
Because he knows he has something crazy.
Yes. So Christopher Lee / Professor Saxton, as he's known, essentially thinks that this could be some sort of missing link. He thinks this is a very grand scientific discovery that needs to be shared with the world, and he needs to transport it to a proper facility, obviously, to further examine this thing. So he's thinking, like, this is a worthy mission, and that in that regard, he's half thinking of himself to a certain degree, half thinking of science, in my opinion. It's kind of the classic humanist researcher, investigator, or whatever.
He wants the glory.
He kind of does, but he's still pretty cool. I don't mind him.
He's got a cool look. He's got the classic, like, scientist, anthropologist, archaeologist, sci-fi guy. No wonder he was in all these sci-fi movies. He's got that perfect look to him, for sure.
He kind of does, yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny, though, because there's a lot of people with mustaches in this movie, and at one point I was just like, wait a second, who's who again? We had to watch this a couple times.
Amber was trying to categorize, all the characters by their beards and mustaches.
Man,
so, yeah.
and then it didn't work. So anyways, we had to go back, revise that one.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yes. So we kind of skipped over a couple of things in this little summary here. One thing in particular was the instance with the priest, like as they're boarding the Hogwarts Express. Or sorry, I'm just referring to it. I mean the Trans-Siberian Express. Sorry, guys.
No, that's awesome. That is hilarious.
So they have that like kind of like confrontation, hey, where there's this priest who kind of calls them out on the mission.
Yeah, so he's also boarding the train. Like, they're all on this platform, right? And he's obviously, it's all very strange, right? It's kind of this mashup of just, at first, it just seems like a mashup of very strange different characters. And then throughout, as the film kind of goes on, you realize that each one of these characters is almost like from their own individual genre that is then just interacting with other characters in the film. So yeah, they meet with almost like a recreation of Rasputin, essentially, on the train platform,
right?
As we kind of discover throughout. Yeah, like he's a monk / mystic who's traveling with like a countess from one of the Russian controlled states at the time, and he's a very strange man, and he can perceive evil, obviously, because he starts to call things out.
He does, and there's that like where he draws the cross. He draws it on the ground, then he tries to draw it on the box and doesn't appear on the box. And he kind of says, he's like, whatever you have here is unholy and must be destroyed. And obviously the expedition leader has issues with that and kind of calls him out on it. And the priest responds with the idea, like, he says, where he lives, there is no cross. And that's when he draws the crosses, and then obviously it doesn't appear. And so it's a very spooky, very ominous, like very religious overtone scene, right?
It's the classic clashing. They're pitting up, like, obviously, like science versus religion and
tradition versus progress, to a certain degree.
Because even if Saxon believes he has something dangerous and in like not entirely like human in that crate, he's obviously being confronted by a deeply religious man on the platform, and The only thing he can like rationalize is the exact opposite of that, obviously. Right? Even he's in denial the entire way. Like even when this thing is outside of the crate, he's almost in denial until he's finally like, well, it must be out and it must be alive. And it's just like this real hard right turn where it's just like, oh, okay. You finally acknowledged it. Sure. Great.
Great. When it's far too late.
It is. So let's rewind a tiny bit again because they board the train and Saxon is confronted. It's really well done the way they put the characters together though, because he has this classic sort of like rival that he meets on the train. So it's Dr. Wells, who's played by Peter Cushing, who's a friendly rival, right? He's from the Royal Geographic Society, who we're familiar with from episodes we've covered, looking at Zerzura and things like that, right?
That was a good one.
And he's on board. He's traveling completely separately. He was not part of the Manchuria expedition at all, but he's the perfect... Also, he's not an antagonist. He's a protagonist antagonist. He's a victim like all the rest of these people trapped aboard, essentially. He's not there to disrupt, but he's very inquisitive. And
he's got the lens to see through, like to see the actual threat to a certain degree once it actually reveals itself and to confront the guy like on an equal playing field. Like,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
And it was one of my favorite lines of the whole movie because Wells confronts him right away. He's like, you've got something alive in there. And Saxon's all, pompous and standoffish. And he's like, the occupant he's like, you got something alive in there. He's like, the occupant hasn't eaten in 2 million years. Or something along those lines, right?
Can something hibernate for that long?
But it's like, and that's what he keeps denying, even though he keeps seeing signs that it's obviously not just a normal specimen in the ice, right? His rivals. Well, Saxon's eager to keep it completely secret. He doesn't want to arouse any suspicion. But his rival Wells, I love this. He ends up bribing the porter. Right, this is one of my favorite parts. He bribes the porter to investigate the crate as an archaeological rival, which is totally what it was like back in the day. Like think about like the bone wars in the 1800s and stuff like that. Oh, totally. Right?
Yeah.
This is kind of what that reminds me of. The porter's, of course, killed by a now completely defrosted and still somehow like not falling apart humanoid.
Yeah. It's pretty slimy though.
That
it looks
was
pretty
within
gross.
the ice. Oh yeah. We'll talk about the effects in a minute, but it escapes the crate by essentially picking the lock, which is curious because we were asking this, we were watching and we were like, what? How did it know how to pick that lock? That's very strange.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Some crazy ancient humanoid thing, but is it learning? Is kind of becomes the question as the plot evolves and everything.
Exactly. I had this fun little quote here just to kind of go along with what I said a minute ago. This is just from a film AV blog. We'll have it in the show notes, but it says, poised on the edge of camp, Horror Express nimbly cycles through genres with drawing room mystery and procedural elements bleeding into universal style monster effects and science fiction. And it's kind of funny because it's a lot of Spanish actors trying to be Russian or Cossack or Polish or just whoever on the train.
Yeah.
And it is pretty noticeable at times. And then when you add the layer of cycling through different genres too, it's kind of funny.
It is. Just,
it makes it that cult kind of like humor.
Because it works.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of movies where they try that kind of thing and the elements don't come together like they do in this one.
Yeah. That's
actually
if you haven't gathered so far, I mean, obviously you guys have watched it, we hope, but we're really dealing with something very similar to John Carpenter's The Thing. And we can talk about that more in a minute. But there's a telltale sign that we also got in The Thing that happens early in the film where the dog, this tiny little dog of the Countess, starts barking at the crate early on before it even escapes. And this just like, and then, Rasputin, the priest, comments on the dog again. He's like, even the dog can, spot evil or whatever, make some comment. They all know, and there's like so many little hints along the way, even though the passengers are all oblivious on this train. The isolation factor too is also pretty awesome, I guess, too. It's on a train. It's like snakes on a plane. It's just missing Samuel L. and snakes, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Snakes. It's two pretty important ingredients to snakes on a plane.
But you know what I mean? Like they're trapped in a tiny space with this, on a moving.
It's an isolated, exactly.
In the middle of Siberia with this with something they don't even really know what's going on.
It's spooky, man. And there's that whistling scene, hey? Like there's like this weird ominous music and you're like,
oh yeah, that's right.
You remember that? It was like almost just in the wind or something, but the Countess hears it.
The ambiance is really spooky.
Oof.
I quite enjoyed it. Finally, the party officials are confronted with the truth because they find multiple murders, right? People are missing and then they demand order the crate, even though Saxon's like, no, screw you. He throws the keys out the window. At that point, I was like, that's a little insane. You should probably just open the crate, right? Mm-hmm. They break it open with an axe. And of course, the creature closed the door on its way out. This is what's kind of funky too, right? It not only picked the lock, but it closed it and locked it all back up again.
Right. To avert suspicion.
Which is a telltale sign of what we're dealing with here.
It's much more than just a fossil or a primitive, like Neanderthal or something like that. And so we're already kind of picking up on this. And it's quite early in the movie still. But is it a monster? Is it an alien? What is this? Like, it looked very almost cyborgy when you get that shot of its like one red eye, like looming out from the cage or the box out at the porter. And then that kills the porter instantly, essentially. He's just like frozen solid. And then you get the draining of his like all color from his eyes. What does that mean? But anyways, we get more of that. So the fossil, as I like to refer to it, or what are you calling this thing? The thing?
No. I like that term. I like calling it that. That's just,
because that's
it reminds me
essentially
of
what
like
it
a
is.
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea episode or something.
Kind of, those rock people.
Yeah.
This thing isn't completely void of conscience, though, and it is learning, because we get the one scene where it appears in the compartment of the two sleeping children, and that could be a very bad scene, obviously. In this case, it's a little bit more of a conservative movie. It's not as if we're gonna get, very, very visceral child damages or whatever you want to call it, violence and all that kind of thing. But it's almost like it's debating attack and then leaves them like the innocent. So it kind of has a little bit of that to it.
So it's like it's almost, they baked that into the plot, and also it lines up with the fact that it's the early 70s. Because if this thing is learning off of who it's intaking, it's not just for survival. It's literally like it would have to work with also the emotion, like the emotions that it's taking on too. That's different than the thing. That's definitely different than the thing.
Anyways, okay, so it leaves the children and lurks into the shadows of the train. Instead attacks a watchman who is later found dead. And it's interesting because we get this juxtaposition, because we go from that scene into the dinner compartment scene where the professor and the countess and a few others are going for dinner, and they order the fish, and the fish comes, and of course it's a whole fish with the white eye, and it's like this big like classic zoom in, like classic 70s style. Yeah. And he makes the comment, he's like, it was from being boiled, the fish, like, because he asked, he's like, those white eyes, they're like, I'm doing this in a Spanish accent now.
Hey, well, it makes sense.
But they do comment on the white eyes.
Did we skip over that at the beginning? The guy who was with the white eyes at the beginning? Did we skip over that? No, sorry.
White eyes are pretty important in this film.
They're very key.
And yeah, exactly. It symbolizes essentially the draining of their soul into this thing, as we later learn. But it's interesting because this is really the crux of the film. This creature is obtaining the consciousness or the memories of these victims. And it just slowly usurps more and more, and they just pile up. And one of my favorite victims, poor Miss Jones. She's hilarious, man. I love this girl. She's basically the assistant on the expedition, a kind of a portly lady, a classic kind of no nonsense, whatever. She's got her glasses and her cute little curls and all that kind of stuff. And the professor, after he he makes this connection between the eyes of the fish and the victims, and he goes up to her quite abruptly in the dinner compartment and says, "I may need your assistance." And then she just looks at him, kind of like does the elevator glance, and is like, "Well, at your age, I'm not surprised."
Yeah.
And then he just kind of like stares blankly and just like, it's like, what? And then he realizes, like, the autopsy. Like,
oh, well, that's different.
That's a dirty joke. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
man.
that is a dirty joke.
Yeah, I loved that. I was laughing out loud.
It was so cavalier, though.
It was very it was very dry.
Yeah,
it was very like almost like British in a sense.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was so sad when she ends up getting murked. I didn't really enjoy that scene. But they start to examine the victims. This is before she actually gets, eliminated. Miss Jones, she performs a couple of procedures. She's trying to figure out what's going on with these victims. And they seem to have, they say at one point, they're smooth, like the brains, as if like they're just, there's nothing to them anymore. They're just like these like
that's
sponges
the
or
physical
something.
the indication that it's been devoid of knowledge. It's been smoothed out.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Okay.
And they even say it's like the memory has been removed, like chalk erased from the board.
Interesting.
It's so weird. And again, we get the reference to the chalk. It's a continuing metaphor from the earlier scene with the drawing of the crosses.
Which I don't get, which is so bizarre. I guess we can come back to that at the end.
Chalk metaphor?
Just
chalk
the fact
it up to.
just the fact that yeah, what can we chalk this up to? No, that it wouldn't write on the crate and like what that means.
The cross symbol.
Right?
If you wrote the thing on it, I wonder if that would write.
So I mean, yeah, like they definitely make it seem as if because how ancient does this thing? Because Christianity only goes back so far, obviously, right? If this was a thing in the ice that was a Neanderthal, then whatever it was infected with would have no frame of reference, presumably, of Christianity and its symbols.
But it's gaining that as it kind of absorbs its victim. And we're getting a body count here
I suppose
because
that makes sense, yeah.
after it kind of like sneaks in, after they do the autopsies and it's looking at the victims and kind of examining it, and it's like, what is it? What is it looking for?
Right.
But it continues on with its sort of shenanigans and ends up...
Shenanigans. Just some lighthearted shenanigans.
Just some, just a walk in the park.
Jolly old brain
When
sucking.
a walk in the park isn't a walk in the park. I'm sorry, that's bad.
You could have done copywriting for this film.
Yep.
Would have been great.
But we get a lot of people dying. The mortician's attacked. This other woman's attacked. It's like she's a thief or whatever. She's trying to steal it with a safe and gets jumped by this thing. But anyways, it kind of it keeps accumulating these memories and this knowledge, if you want to say. And it's funny, another good quote. Who said this again? We wrote this down. It says, a creature like that, how would it ever die? It just keeps like growing and growing and amassing all these like things supposedly in the same body at this point. So we think. We don't really know what it's doing. Like, is it transgressing back and forth? Is it infecting the victim as well as receiving all of its like life force, essentially?
Well, and that's the cool thing. Yeah, like there's, you can go down the crazy rabbit holes thinking about what it would be, like physically be. But like, obviously, if it's a alien life form, it would be made out of something not, native to Earth or whatever, but it's able to do this replication, then that's what's crazy to me. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know why this might sound random, but I remember in high school doing this debate in like Science 10 or whatever on like whether fire's alive, and you had to like make an argument either one way or the other, right?
Classic.
And it makes me wonder, it reminds me again of like that X-Files episode with like the down in the volcano and like silicone-based life forms or something like that. But it's like, what if something like this, it really couldn't die, because even though it takes on like organic life form, like this creature is on the train, it could really survive in a state of like any other element, or it could just be something else for a time being. You know what I mean? Like it would just be like whatever it needs to be, because it's just this like matter that can just take on anything. That's something that can't really be defeated and is sort of terrifying to think. I don't know.
And can survive those types of conditions for as long as it did.
Yeah, for like
years.
millions of years. It's crazy.
Crazy.
It's freaky. So, I mean, obviously, again, like crazy comparisons to The Thing and John Carpenter's work. And there's a few other films, obviously, preceding The Thing that were very much like The Horror Express, too, where there's just alien life forms that were amorphous and could take on different things. And even Invasion of the Body Snatchers has that element, too, really, as well, right?
Has more of a hive mentality, though.
That's different. Yeah, that's like multiples, like not just like one amoeba-like thing that can like,
This thing kind of reminds me of like the Stranger Things kind of.
Yeah, this is because it doesn't like break apart or anything like that, where then you end up with more than one. It just kind of seems to go person to person and takes on information. Yeah. And then, like you said, that was really curious, and I'm glad you brought it up with the kids in the compartment, and it made a moral choice. It's not just purely survival.
Exactly.
Right?
And is that an aspect of the creature itself, or the memories it's taken on and the everything else? You know what I mean?
or purely just a product that they didn't want to do that, and it's because it's the
Exactly.
1970s and we're misreading it entirely.
Exactly. It could be any of those.
Right. But at this point in time, I just want to come back to the Countess and her father. They sort of come back into the plot.
Right. And the father. Father Pujanov or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Was that his name? I don't even know. We'll go with that. That's fine. He's a minor character anyway. But he seems to think that there's some sort of like spies on the
Pujardov.
Ooh.
Father Pujardov.
There you go. I mean, they're obviously paranoid. They're sort of adept to what's going on. A lot of the other passengers would just be freaked out and not really know. The autopsy results have come back at this point, and this is one of my favorite parts of the movie because this is just a rabbit hole for just thinking about crazy shit, because they realize that for this creature, at least in their rudimentary sort of like conception of what they're looking at, is that its brain is located in the eye itself, and I'm air quoting here like massively for everyone. This is an audio show, and not the brain, right? Which I think is totally bizarre. But they're looking at this, and they're looking through a microscope, and there's images of prehistoric Earth, like from space,
Like Earth orbiting in space.
and so obviously
And
it's an
other
alien
weird
life
things.
form. It's taken these memory snapshots from millions, hundreds of millions, even potentially years ago. And
At
then,
least 2 million years ago.
right, well, obviously, and then maybe even jumped through other life forms, presumably, right? And then ended up in the Iceman and the ice. I mean, how long had it been there? Who knows?
Yeah.
Chilling in a Triceratops. I don't know. I don't see that. They might not be a ton of point to that. I don't know what its motives are, though. It's very strange, this creature. It's
It's very
absolutely
strange,
bizarre.
and it seems to be like telepathically based. It's not as if, like you said, right? It doesn't like break off a part of it. It doesn't infect you physically, or like it's not like you swallow it like some sort of, you know what I mean? Like, what's the creature I'm thinking of?
Not sure.
Not
sure.
alien really, but it does go in through people sometimes, like the suckers and things like that. Where you know, it's more of like an actual parasite.
Yeah,
creature.
exactly. And what's so obviously like to put yourself in the place of these people figuring this out. It's 1906. Just to remind everyone listening and watching that we're watching the film, right? Nobody had been in space yet, so there's no images from space. No one was just, oh yeah, like that was.
There's only theories about it.
Exactly. So to like see that would be what's the word I'm looking for?
Mind-boggling,
I guess. Let's go with that.
gobsmacking.
Sure.
I don't know.
It would be jarring. It would just be like it would just be. It'd be
You would seriously doubt what your eyes are actually seeing if you're misinterpreting what you're seeing. If this literally, like, it's just so clear, right? It's a photograph. It's not like it's like microbacteria moving around a petri dish or something. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, but they're still sort of grappling with whether or not it's an ancient disease or something more, like throughout the film, even after they're looking through this. They're like, this is something from space. Mm-hmm. But it's jumping from person to person. It ends up in Inspector Mirov as well, which isn't good.
No.
And then they threw a real monkey wrench into the movie because obviously some information has been relayed ahead to Russian authorities, and there's this crazy Cossack, like rural general guy that shows up when the train stops and is presumably looking for the spies that are after the, I guess the Countess and the
Yeah, because the count and the Countess and her father, the count, I guess you refer to him as that.
Yeah, Count
Count Chocula. He has this sneaking suspicion that this isn't something from outer space. He is under the impression that it's after him and it's after his family fortune and secrets, right? Because they have this like unblemishable steel that they like own and have patented or whatever.
And that is like crazy sci-fi shit. Because why would you think that? In 1906.
Spies? I don't know. Spies are everywhere. What?
Crazy, amorphous, like spies that come out of the ice.
Technology is what you're referring to.
Like how would you think that this? Because he thought it was being controlled or something like that. Right?
Yeah, it's like an automaton or something like that. Well, all this kind of stuff was coming into definitely the turn of the 1900s and all that. There was those weird machines that remember the one that played chess.
And I guess there's lots of books. People were coming up with some crazy stuff. I can't
remember if that was the one that was like a total phony where there's literally someone inside the machine like moving it for them and everyone thought it was literally a robot that was smart enough to beat everyone at chess. There was something like that. Anyways, if anyone listening can remember, that'd be sweet. That'll be over.
Yeah, hit us up. I have no idea. Anyway. But that scene doesn't last long, though. So he comes on with all his men and he roughs up Christopher Lee, his character, and a couple other people. But they have this moment where they flick the lights off to get the red eyes, coming back to that.
Right.
Because then they could actually tell who was the creature.
Yeah.
Right? Which was awesome.
Yeah.
And
Dead giveaway.
And a lot of death happens in that instance.
Because they what ends up happening is the creature reanimates them is kind of what happens, right? Like they become his like zombies or something. And that's a weird turn to the plot too. It's
that's different.
This constant evolution of the threat. It's not just this one thing now, it's all of them.
Then we're more like the Thing again, going back to John Carpenter. That's more, because
like
then they breaks apart,
though?
Right?
Like, you know what I mean? Like, or is it just controlling their minds? Is it literally just, or is it controlling the tissues that's attached to the mind?
See, but then, telepathic, I guess that's weird. That is weird.
That throws another monkey wrench.
And that goes back to the cross on the Thing, too, where it's just like, does it even matter what you were trying to write on there? If you tried to write... but they did write some other stuff on there, though.
Oh, did they? Yeah. They must have, obviously, like, because there was a box.
So this is where there's some sort of... There's some...
Transported.
There's some subtle slip-ups, right? Where if we really dig deep, there's some holes, obviously, in the plot.
Some simplicities taken, some, you know what I mean? Well, not
some
really
liberties.
Holes. What's the hole?
Well, for example, like if they were able to write something else on the crate, which there were other markings on the crate, but not the cross, then they're clearly leaning that either this thing has just decided that no more markings on here because I have this energy or aura or like power, and it's just like just affecting the wood around it in the crate, or it literally does have some sort of a connection to what the Christian conception of hell would be, and it had already dealt with ancient Samaria and everything going back to however long, and it's just a demon from somewhere not good. You know what I mean? And then it's taking over each person on the train. There's massive religious overtones to the film.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
All right. That's your hole?
That's just one. I guess I can come up with some more if you want me to.
You just reminded me of Brett from Flight of the Conchords when he writes that huge long letter to Jermaine about his explanation as to why he's moving out, and by the not even halfway through, Jermaine's just not even reading it anymore.
Yeah, you're just not even listening to me anymore. Is that what that's what you just admitted to? Great.
I kind of got lost in that one.
What are you talking about? I think you're just sleepy.
I'm not sleepy.
All right.
Anyways.
Well,
can we get to the part where the priest is taken over by the Thing?
Let's talk about that.
Because that was another twist, right? Because he's very much against it. The whole thing. The whole idea of it. And then in one split second, he almost like has this flip of the switch where he aligns himself with the devil and is going to take this entire train down, is kind of what his mission becomes, and starts taking out the Cossack, all of his men, and just goes on a blind rampage. Ring any bells for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is, but I just like... Oh, man, you guys. We watched this movie twice. I'm sort of forgetting exactly how that scene ended with the monk, with Rasputin. How did that exactly end? Because he wasn't actually under the control of the creature.
He was, yeah.
For a time.
Well, I think he was. He goes down in flames. He doesn't make it out.
Right.
No.
There's only a couple that make it out.
There is
other
other
than the
passengers
random
on board.
the random passengers that.
It's the three of them, right? The Countess, Wells, and Saxton that end up getting out.
Which is kind of surprising. I didn't expect Saxton to make it out, that's for sure.
No.
You'd think he'd be one of the early ones to go, being one of the ones to actually bring it on.
But he's the one that's continuing the narrative, and in the beginning, he's the one that introduces it also.
Here's one of the things they kind of screw up on. Like, there's a few other points I know you want to make. Like, on that note, too, I guess this isn't a whole, but this is something that they could have done and that the Thing did differently, was that they show who everyone is, right? They don't really use the suspense of... like, who is infected? Like, who's who? All that,
like they do in the Thing.
That paranoia of, I'm talking to you right now, but I'm not
scary.
sure if you're actually who you say. Like, they have a tiny bit of that, but then they reveal it really quickly, who you're dealing with, who they're looking for. And that's where you get the genre mashup. it's a sci-fi, but then it's a
parlor
mystery.
drama. Yeah, exactly.
It's like the Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
With an alien life form killing everyone. Is essentially what we have, right?
It is, yeah.
Which is really enjoyable because I love Murder on the Orient Express and Poirot.
Very much so. It's a great one. Agatha Christie, classic.
I think you could have slotted Poirot in this exact narrative and he would have performed just fine. He would have actually been just as enjoyable.
He would have been more effective than, was it Inspector Murov or Detective Murov? I can't remember.
Yeah, Murov wasn't that convincing.
No.
He wasn't that convincing. And neither was the gore in particular. I wanted to make that point as well. The effects were kind of, they went pretty minimalist on the effects. There wasn't like lots of blood and guts that we get in some other cheesy 70s
It
horror.
was more the shadow and illusion, kind of like the suggestibility of it.
Especially early too, like you get the flash of the creature's face when it's the early like Iceman creature, right? When it's like walking through the dark hallways of the train, which I quite like. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is more, just leaves more up to the imagination.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even remember what the exact rating. It probably had a pretty bad rating.
Oh,
well,
it would have been
bad,
rated
but
R. I mean, even the autopsy scenes, they expose things like what would be brains and things like that. But it's literally
the eyeball and the needle in the eyeball. I mean,
yeah,
like
a cow's eyeball or whatever that was, right? But I mean, for this 1970s, that's gore. That's gore. Even though it's what everyone does in grade 8 science.
It's gore. I almost couldn't do it. There were still eyelashes on my sheep's eye.
I remember mine too.
Not good.
Same thing.
Wasn't into that. I had to split open a fetal pig.
I did that too.
Like the skull of
We have talked about this before on the show.
Anyways, yeah, let's not get into it.
How many other horrible memories you want to talk about on this film episode?
And it wasn't from Acapella Group.
Oh, God. That's a deep Bob's Burgers fan joke.
Deep.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, do you have any? I mean, we're coming down to the end here of this Film Friday. I mean, I loved this movie. I quite enjoyed it. I feel
really
like it should be
enjoyed it.
more of a cult classic than it is. It's obscure.
It is pretty obscure. It was suggested to us though by Octoberpod.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Go check those guys out. They're on YouTube. They're on other stuff. They do stuff. They're sweet.
They're pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Pretty sweet.
Pretty cool. Pretty weird. Just like us. It's great.
Well, we want to know what you guys thought of this movie. I know it's pretty obscure and it's one of those ones that maybe a lot of you won't be into, but we really want you to be into it. So go watch it if you haven't already. But any other final thoughts, Andrew?
I mean, I guess we should just ask each other like what your favorite part, like what you loved most. Just to kind of conclude, what did you love most about this being a horror and a sci-fi, the kind of classic ITP?
To be honest, I liked the period piece fact of it. You know what I mean? The fact that it went back to the turn of the century. I loved the wardrobes. I loved the general scenes, like, the mise en scène, the setting.
Yeah. The train
Siberia,
was good.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The creature wasn't disappointing. We've watched a lot of these where we don't cover them on Film Fridays or Cinema Sundays or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, we're like, no, can't do it.
No, yeah. So this one delivered, in my opinion. And sure, there might have been a few holes, if Andrew wants to call them that, but I think it's up to interpretation mostly. And this is one that you kind of have to watch. You can watch more than a couple times and still get more out of it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We'll definitely watch it again.
Yeah, I mean, there's other side characters that had lines and some significance that we didn't even talk about. Like, there's a lot of characters in this movie. The one thing that I would have wanted more was more like searching for the creature, like the discovery of the Iceman. It's like literally like 2 seconds of like a little thing, right?
Yeah.
It would have been cool if they did like a more of a build up of the initial discovery. But
more explanation as to the source. Like we have Manchuria, that's it.
Yeah. Maybe they could have even done a flashback. Like, they've done like a 65 million years ago flashback to like something.
Oh yeah, to start off the movie.
But then I guess that's too much. That's giving away too much, right? Yeah. I mean, you just assume this thing crashed on an asteroid or something.
Yeah. Well, the other question I have too then is if this thing came from space, why the heck would fire kill it? Hey?
That doesn't make a lot of
I don't think a fiery train crash would kill this thing.
Well, I guess you're left wondering if there was ever going to be a sequel to The Horror Express.
Reboot.
I feel like there should be a remake.
That would be cool.
It would be super fun.
I mean, keep the general prestige of it though, and
keep it. I mean, you can almost turn it into a kind of a comedy horror,
where it's like
very pomp and very flashy, almost kind of like a combination sci-fi. Of like I'm picturing like a Grand Budapest Hotel / The Void.
Yeah, like a Wes Anderson.
Yeah. And I mean,
Wes Anderson crossed with Wes Craven? Or Wes Craven?
he didn't do The Void. No, that wasn't
he didn't
The
do The Void.
But we have covered The Void on Film Friday. If you guys haven't watched that, it's a pretty awesome, insane movie. That's all I really have to say. I did really enjoy. I enjoyed it a lot. I think to me, it's kind of a cult. It's a cult classic in my eyes, which is great. And it always leaves me wondering. Same as The Thing, where it's like, I don't even know. What would you do if you ran into something like this, and then you're isolated in Siberia? You're screwed. We want to hear what you guys have to say. What you think? Hit us up on all of our socials at Into the Portal Podcast. I don't even know. I'm getting tired. Where else are we? At Into the Portal 1 on Twitter.
Yep.
And straightupstrange.com is the network website. Go check us out there. Intotheportal.com if you haven't been to the regular website before.
Lots of fun stuff coming down. And really, like, spring's around the corner. So we've got a lot of cool ideas. Andrew is kind of he likes his clothing. And he's always wanted to design streetwear and, like, anything to do with like the paranormal, and this is kind of our first foray into that, so we're both really excited about it.
Spring's gonna be
strange fun. People just
Definitely.
Embrace it.
Absolutely.
Be it. Do it.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely. So thank you so much for listening as always, and until next time on Into the Portal,
your gateway to the bizarre.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.